Yes, yeah. I'm Terry Lamb. I'm Professor of Languages and Interdisciplinary Pedagogy at the University of Westminster. I've worked in universities now for about 25 years after 16 years spent teaching languages in largely multilingual schools in London. I've worked really on teacher education programs, master's programs, doctoral, and at the moment my work involves supporting learning and teaching and supporting pedagogies that are inclusive across the University of Westminster. I also worked between 2000 and 2010 very closely with the government on the National Languages Strategy and other related work. That all stopped in 2010. So since then I've been working primarily with the European Commission, the Council of Europe and the International Federation of Language Teacher Associations on an international level and also on a more local community-based level. It's a difficult question because things have changed quite a lot. So I would say at the moment things are rather patchy. So there are places where community languages are part of the school's identity. They're part of the school, where the school includes them, includes opportunities for learning them and for celebrating them. But unfortunately, there are others where they're much more excluded and not seen as part of the school, in fact seen as a bit of a hindrance and a bit of a problem to deal with. I would say that there's been a kind of downward turn, really, from times where more schools, there was a more coherent picture of seeing community languages as a resource, not only for the speakers of those languages, but actually for everyone, for the whole school community. But unfortunately, that seems to have changed. I think it's crucial that we build on the schools that are really recognising linguistic diversity and on their practices, and also on practices that have gone on before in the 1980s and the 2000s, because they're all very, very effective. And it's about all of the formal and informal educational spaces in the school reflecting linguistic diversity. So just on a physical level, that you look at the school and it looks multilingual through the signage and through the resources and what's in the library and all of that, and the kinds of activities that are going on, that you can hear it around. It's being used for communication. It's being used as a resource in the curriculum as well, through, for example, language awareness programs, where all children are learning to enjoy the diversity and to learn from that. I mean, I did a lot of that kind of work in the 80s, where we were looking, really kind of drawing on the children as a resource and using them, recording them, using that as a resource to help all the children to learn about the different languages and how they were related as well to one another, the idea of families of languages, for example. I think there should be opportunities for where it's possible for children to be learning their home languages as part of the formal curriculum. That's very important. Obviously, in a school like the last one I taught in, there were 40 languages, so that's quite hard. But we did have 2 of those languages. We had Greek and Turkish on the formal curriculum for everybody and offered to everybody. And that sent out a very important message. And then, as I say, alongside that, we did activities across the curriculum where we could draw on the other languages as well and raise awareness of them. It's about sort of creating a context where community languages are seen as part of the whole languages curriculum, not as something where they're not as important or as relevant as those, the French or the German or whatever that's being taught. So I think those kinds of things, working with communities would be another one, I would say. And of course, offering support for those children who are new arrivals that need to also learn the language of education, but doing that in very sensitive ways through including them in classrooms and through making sure that all teachers across the curriculum understand their role as language teachers as well and have the training that supports them to do that. I'm doing a European project at the moment called Supporting Multilingual Classrooms, and I work with teachers of all disciplines in various countries to open their minds to the fact that bilingualism, plurilingualism isn't a problem, it's a resource, first of all, so that takes some rethinking, but then the practical ways of how we do that in language classes and across the curriculum, and how that supports children in feeling part of the school, and therefore, and also in starting to themselves understand the language of schooling. There are many reasons, so I'll just keep it brief, I think. I mean, for me, the key reason is that it opens minds. I think the opportunity to learn about different cultures and to meet people and to communicate with people really, really does open minds to difference, as well as to learning other languages. I mean, when I say that we offered Greek and Turkish to all, we had a lot of monolingual English speakers choosing Turkish or Greek as their first language. They tried all of them and then they could choose. And when we did some research to find out why, they said, because it's all around us and our friends speak it, we can practice it and we hear it. So it, so it really opened their mind, and they were seeing things and noticing things, and very often went on to do a second foreign language. So I think that's very important. We're in a globalized world. People are working and living in very diverse communities increasingly. It's penetrating the whole world. I mean, I work in countries where it's quite new. Still, I was in Armenia last week, for example. But, but still, there is that diversity. And people need to learn how to kind of see that as normal and interesting, and to learn from it. And having those encounters with people really, I think, challenges the fears and the prejudices that lead to conflict. And it's probably needed now more than ever before in recent decades. So I think languages play a really important part in all of that. I reflect on that quite a lot. I mean, my main languages that I studied were French and German. But I came from a background where no one had learned languages. I mean, we didn't travel. I was in the north of England, working class family. I didn't go abroad until I was 14. So why did I then become interested in French? I always put it down to a French cheese poster that was next to my desk. Because in those days you didn't see sort of squelchy cheeses, and there were these cheeses, and I was fascinated by that. And then I went on a school trip and I was fascinated by the differences. So it was a cultural thing, really, rather than a linguistic fascination. I was really fascinated by that. And then I learned Latin and German at school, and later Spanish at school. Went to university, did some Italian, and later on, I learned Turkish as well, because I spent some summers, my summer holidays as a teacher, teaching in Turkey and getting to know families, and I was determined to be able to do that. And of course, in London, I could practice it all the time with my own students. So different motivations. That was partly, I wanted to learn something that was completely different, but I also wanted that connection. And I tried Arabic, and I had really no connection. Turkish I did, and loved it. So, I think that's it. They're kind of very personal sorts of histories and reasons why, but we need to tap into them. I always think about, I mean, my doctorate years ago was about motivation and learner autonomy. So learners having a voice in their learning, I think, is very important. And when you look at the theory of intrinsic motivation, which is what we really want to nurture, there are three areas that need to be developed. And one is relatedness. So in order to be intrinsically motivated, we need to know what we're doing, why we're doing it. We need to have some kind of connection with people, but with the content as well. It needs to relate to our lives. Many children think that it's nothing to do with their lives, and I've had young, teenagers say, it's not for people like us, you know. So relating it, building a relationship, which of course involves interesting content, flexible content that people can choose. You know, they don't have to do horse riding as a hobby; they can do skateboarding or whatever. So that relatedness is important, and then of course there's the competence that they're able to do it. So that really also involves giving them opportunities to show what they can do and to understand what progress they're learning, and to break it down. I've had children say, but it's rubbish, or I'm rubbish at German because I've been doing it for 6 months and I can't speak it. Yeah, so they have an unrealistic view. So talking about language learning and what it is very important, and why we're doing it, and getting the children to research that themselves and promote it across the school. The third component is autonomy, of course. So it's that sense of, you know, they need choice, they need guided choice, and, you know, not just free for all. They need to learn how to choose the things that they relate to and that are at the right level for them. And I think when you've got all of that with exciting content and a choice there, then you do get very motivated students. I saw that myself when I was teaching in schools in the early 90s, and it was remarkable, the increase in motivation. But it's shown in research that I've done since then on a bigger scale. I must say that I started campaign for a language policy in 1998, and then we had the Nuffield report in 2000. And as a result of that, I was involved with government on developing a national languages strategy that was in place till 2010, that did all kinds of wonderful things, including opportunities for multilingualism to be part of the languages curriculum and to build on that. So I would say that what we learned from that was that it is very important to develop the multilingualism throughout the school in a structured way. We had the R Languages project, we had the Diploma in Languages and International Communication, we had the World Languages Strategy funded by government that I was involved in. So I would say, yes, we definitely do. What I would say is that we shouldn't start pretending that this is a wonderful new idea, we've had one, yeah? It was discarded in 2010, and what we need, and many people were invested in it, thousands and thousands that took part in that, and whose lives were involved, you know, were influenced by it. So I think we definitely need another one, but I think we need to learn from the past and develop a strategy that helps us to face the new challenges that we have now, which are probably even bigger challenges than they were 10 years ago. So it's absolutely essential, but we mustn't forget that this is not a new idea, that we've had one before that was very successful.